Bill English, 1990 to 2018. That's not his life, of course, but almost exactly half of it so far. Elected as MP for Wallace in 1990, Leader of the Opposition, twice Finance Minister, Prime Minister from late 2016. And today he announced he was standing down as National Party Leader and as an MP. Having done so well on election night, almost historically well for a third-term government, there was a sense that finding himself in opposition and leading it for 3 more years would be a trek too far. Was it that, I asked him, he realised he simply couldn't do it?
No, I never thought I can't do it, John. I did think, though, that after nearly 3 decades in politics, including quite a long stint in opposition before, that I'd quite like to try life without politics, and it's certainly the case for my family, most of whom don't know life without their father being in politics and both their parents meeting the demands of public life. So at this stage I thought, well, look, if I'm not totally committed, then I'm best to move on, take other personal or professional opportunities.
Do you know what opportunities are presenting themselves yet?
No, not really. I've been pretty focused actually on doing the job I'm in. I think if you're trying to run an opposition and look at opportunities outside, that'll become pretty apparent. But now I'm free to do that, so I will.
You've done some extraordinary things as a politician, and for me, probably the most extraordinary was coming back after 2002. Now, I know when you replaced John Campbell as Prime Minister, we talked about that, and you talked about that at length. But how tough was it, to use your phrase, and get back up?
Well, in a sense, the events getting knocked over were the tough ones, and that's now a long time ago. But at the time, I just remember thinking 2 things really. One is that the skills I had at that age, I think around about 40, related to politics and public policy, were skills I really wanted to use. I was motivated about that opportunity, and also a bit of a moral tale, I suppose. I'd always told my kids that they should get back up after the knockdown, and I knew that if I didn't do that, they'd read about it in the newspaper and they probably wouldn't believe anything I ever said again.
You wanted to achieve stuff, and you made that very clear at the time. Have you achieved it?
Well, not all of it. We campaigned on a plan to take forward from here, but in the democratic process the public rejected that and they've taken an alternative, which means we're going to miss out on some things that could have happened. But I am satisfied that with the opportunities for influence that I've had, I've used them well. I've been very fortunate to be someone who's come to work pretty much every day with a sense of mission, and particularly in the last 10 or 12 years, the opportunity to work with a team of people who shared that, but who were cohesive and energetic and positive about New Zealand and about our task in it as a political party. So that's been very satisfying, and some of that has been higher profile. I've been extensively involved in the management of the economy and the government's books through the GFC. Some of it has been much lower profile, but just as satisfying, and particularly in recent years I've enjoyed the challenge of rethinking how we deal with our social problems, our environmental problems, and some of the ongoing issues between government and Māori. And I think in all of those areas we've made some real progress with some different ways of looking at old problems, and I just hope the current government picks them up and keeps going.
Did you make as much progress as you'd hoped to make? I mean, this goes back to your sense of mission, that phrase you used earlier. Is that sense of mission fulfilled now?
Well, as I said, it's not fulfilled in the sense that just a few months ago we were campaigning very hard. Yeah.
Absolutely, but you had 8 years as Finance Minister and a year as Prime Minister. I guess if we look at those 9 years in government, and they were meaningful and influential years, did you achieve as much in that time, in those jobs, as you'd hoped to? I'm looking back to your maiden speech, and you were looking forward to today, and you were kind of taking stock of how you want to leave politics. Are you leaving it having done what you'd hoped to do?
Yeah, well, I am with the opportunity that I had, yes. And I'm in a way pleased that even after that 27 years, I still have the energy and the drive that it takes to get through an intensive campaign with plans for the future. But that's politics. You get the privilege of influence through the democratic process, and it's the same process that can take it off you in an instant. And I've always accepted that. And so, while there's things I wanted to do, I'm not regretful or bitter about that. The democratic process chose another government. Things that I wanted to do will lie there to be picked up in the future, and I'll move on.
People are saying very kind things about you. Audrey Young's op-ed in the New Zealand Herald. Have you read that?
No, I haven't.
Well, she's describing your humanity and your intelligence. But I wonder if sometimes you wanted to give yourself a longer leash. And if we look at the mandate that John Key received for you and for his government, particularly in those first two elections, so 2008, 2011, do you wish you'd taken more risks in those two terms as Finance Minister, given how popular that government was?
Look, I can't think of particular omissions. We took some things that were actually fairly big risks that didn't look like it. Changes in the tax system. Some of the risks just eventuated, like the need to rebuild Christchurch, which I think even now it's hard for people who weren't involved in that process to understand how large and intensive and expensive it was, but how successful it's been. So look, there are times when I look back and I think maybe we should have pushed a bit harder here, but we were in a government that adopted as a way of working, bringing the public along. So there's areas where I wish I'd made a bit more progress in public understanding of the further gains that could be made.
Very quickly, what are those areas? Because that's fascinating. What are those areas?
It would have been, I think we could have made more progress with getting the public, in communicating the capacity we have to break some of these real deep-seated cycles of social dysfunction, and the much more positive role public services could play in that. I think some of the progress that has been and was about to be made in our education system could be lost because it wasn't understood just where it was going. I think another area that really mattered and was related to housing was that the way we organise infrastructure in New Zealand in the past was never really developed for a growing population with growing needs. And we were in the process of changing the system. It actually looks like the new government might pick up some of those ideas. But if that had moved faster, then you might have got a bit less pressure in the housing market.
You were talking sort of a minute ago, I guess, about social investment, and I was reading a speech you made to the Treasury Guest Lecture Series in September 2015, in which you were very explicit around your ideals there. And you said each vulnerable family and individual matters to us. The government's job is to help them make positive and sustained changes that make a difference to their lives. Do you feel now, looking back on almost 3 decades as an MP, starting off as that fresh-faced young man in Wallace, that you have done that?
I think I think what has been achieved is insofar as the core public service delivers to New Zealand's most vulnerable families, that 80% of the time it works, but for 20% of the families it doesn't. I think they are now more aware that we should hold ourselves to account over breaking these cycles, and that there's a toolkit there to do it with. And I would hope that over the next few years we see some serious inroads on family violence, child abuse, long-term welfare dependency, because it is possible. And I hope the government doesn't give up on that and drown us all in a cloud of good intentions, but dismantle the toolkit that could actually make a difference.
Bill English, thank you so much for joining us. One final question. What is it you are looking forward to most?
I think just looking forward to myself and my family being able to make our own choices about how we spend our time, who we spend our time with, our own common sense of purpose, the things we want to work on together, and doing so without the public scrutiny that goes with every public life, not just mine.
Bill English, who is standing down as leader of the National Party and as an MP